Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease. Whether you've been dating for a while or you're just getting started, I believe dating can be fun. So, today we're getting into the top qualities to look for if you want a healthy, secure, long term relationship in no specific order. Of course, these are not the only qualities, but they're pretty damn important. And I created this list based on research I've done on my own, my experience, of course, and I polled my audience on Instagram, who, keep in mind, are mostly women. The trends here are very clear, and I'm excited to get into this list. And after we go through it, I'll share some of the other qualities that get an honorable mention but didn't quite make the cut on the top 10. The point of sharing this, by the way, is that so when you're talking to people on dates or you're just out in the world meeting people, or maybe you're meeting people on apps, your radar is up for these qualities. And I will die on this hill. Okay, attraction matters, attraction is important. But when it comes down to it, someone's character is going to impact your relationship a lot more than how much you want to jump their bones. You deserve someone who you have mutual attraction with and who has the qualities we're going to get into. Also, as we go through this list, consider whether or not you embody these qualities. It doesn't matter what your gender is or who you date, these qualities are going to have a huge impact on how good your relationship feels to be in. Let's get into it. The first one on the list is openness. So, have you ever met someone who says no to everything you suggest doing together? Or every time you talk about something new you're into, they kind of just shut it down? So, that's someone who's not open. Openness is an essential trait in a partner because it keeps so many possibilities in your relationship available. I think everyone's a little stubborn about certain things, and that's fine, but it's hard to get into a relationship that flourishes with someone who's closed off to everything. So, what does it look like to meet someone who is open? Someone who's open will typically be chill when it comes to trying new things. Like maybe they'll express some nervousness or hesitation, but they're still going to do it. They're going to be open to talking about things that maybe make them a little uncomfortable, that are a little different. They're not going to shut things down, I guess is really that's the main quality of someone who is open. Try to think about times when you maybe were presented with an opportunity that you didn't love, but you're like, you know what, let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. That is being open. And that is so important in a relationship, especially when it comes to working on the relationship. You want to be with someone who's open to trying new things like going to therapy, having relationship check ins, maybe being open to the idea of scheduling sex so that you have regular physical intimacy instead of just relying on spontaneity. Someone who's open to having those uncomfortable conversations. Again, that openness is like the door you can go through to get to the next level in your relationship, to become closer, to have more intimacy. So I think this quality is just so, so important. So, how can you tell if someone is open and has this quality? One thing you could try is suggesting a more out there date idea and see what happens. Like, think of a creative date idea. I'll link some in the show notes because I have so many posts with date ideas and just see if they're like into it. Actually, here's an example I can show you. So, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this, but I this year am starting to do a date jar with Johnny, and he was open to this idea when I suggested it, even though it's kind of weird and we don't really need it. Basically, it is a jar full of 50 plus different date ideas that we'll pick out one a week and do, or plan at least. So he was open to this. Like I suggested kind of something a little weird, a little out there, a little different. No one else we know is doing this. So that's an example of trying to suggest something to see if they're open to doing it. I will link the video where I'm making this and talking about it. It's pretty cool. Another way you can test this out is talking about an idea or something you want to try in your own life. How do they react? Do they support it or do they shut it down? Are they curious about it? Or are they going to be like, no, that would never work? So, this is another way to kind of show vulnerability on dating, like talking about things that you want to try. Like you can say, like, oh, I was thinking about picking up a guitar and learning how to play guitar. Oh, I was thinking about trying a yoga class or something, and just see like what their reaction is. And that is a good way to see if they're open minded or not. Another clue is if you're discussing or debating something where you don't really see eye to eye, how willing are they to hear your point of view? Maybe they don't agree with it, but they can be open to hearing it, right? And you can have a discussion and maybe they can kind of put themselves in your shoes kind of thing and understand where you're coming from. Another way is like if you've ever told them something that they did or said that didn't make you feel great, how do they take it? Are they open to feedback? And generally, what is their vibe when it comes to new ideas? And I could tell right away that my husband was open when we first met because he was just down for whatever. He was open to doing check-ins, which was a huge green flag because my ex did not wanna do them at all. He was open to learning about attachment on his own. I didn't tell him, "Hey, go read this book on attachment." He did it himself. And to this day, he's generally just been a go with the flow kinda guy, very open-minded. And I've found his limits, like the things he's not open to doing, but he continues to show me that he's open to trying a lot. And I know I'm very open. He could suggest anything and I do it. I mean, I watched every season of Star Trek with him. I mean, I'm pretty open-minded. The second one is empathy and compassion. So I know it's two words, but it's kind of the same thing. So this is the ability to genuinely understand and share the feelings of others, which fosters connection. Empathy is something that I think a lot of people lack in the dating process, unfortunately, which is just really sad. I mean, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that like over half my guests on the show, they say they want to see more empathy in dating for a reason. And if you're dating, this is absolutely one thing to work on. So, how can you tell if someone is empathetic? So, empathy, the way I think about it, is when you are able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand their experience and be able to accept their experience, even if it's different than your own. Even if you don't feel that way, you're like, I could see how they would feel that way. To me, that is what empathy means. And I'm sure there are a lot of different ways you could kind of describe it, but that's what it feels like to be empathetic. It's like, I can feel you. I feel your feelings. Maybe I don't feel the same myself, but I understand what you're feeling. I think we can all agree empathy is important in all relationships, not just romantic relationships, but you need to have empathy to have intimacy. So, how can you tell if someone is empathetic? I would ask you, how do they react when you tell them something difficult or challenging that you're facing in life? Or on the other side, how do they react when you tell them something that is great, that something that's just really wonderful that you're in your life that you're celebrating? Are they able to feel that with you? Are they able to react in ways like in an appropriate way of like, oh, I'm really sorry you're going through that. That sounds really hard. That's like an empathetic response. Or like, wow, that's so great. Congratulations. How does that feel? That must be so great for you. Like that's kind of on the other side. It's not all about sharing sad or negative things. Like this matters for positive things too. Do they actively listen to you and care about what you're saying? Someone who's empathetic is going to listen. They're invested in what you're saying. They have stake in it. They're paying attention. Can they pick up on your emotions? So someone who's empathetic can also just kind of be aware that you are having feelings, that your emotions exist. And this is something I noticed about Johnny right away. I remember once when his family came to visit Seattle, I started to kind of stress over where we were going to get lunch. Like choosing a restaurant in a big group is such a stressful situation. I'm sure you can relate. Like that is my hell. He immediately picked up on my stress, even though I was trying to just kind of like keep it chill. And he was like, "Babe, I got this. This is my family. You don't need to worry about this." I was just like, damn, he is so attuned to my emotions. And that was maybe like 2 months into dating. Huge green flag. I could tell he was aware of my emotions. And then he was like, I see you're stressing out about this. Let me take this off your plate. Like, don't even put this on your plate. It's my plate. Another question I would have is, are they compassionate towards others? So how do they treat other people in their life? And I guess you could also see, how do they treat wait staff or employees of places that you go on dates? That could also be a clue if they're a compassionate and empathetic person. Another sign that they're empathetic is that they don't judge. So empathetic people are not usually super judgmental. While not everyone, again, will understand differences, empathetic people can accept them and learn from them ideally, right? So an empathetic person will be like, hey, maybe I don't understand this experience, but I can tell it had an impact on your life. I can tell it is making you feel this emotion. I can understand why you're feeling this way. Even though I have never felt that way or I've never experienced this, I can see that you are going through it. So an empathetic person isn't going to judge when they don't understand something. They will just be like, hey, I can see how you feel that way. And back to what I said earlier, we need more of this in dating. All daters need to be a little bit more empathetic because everyone's going through hard stuff like rejection in dating, the dating apps, like everything is really hard for everyone in the dating world. I don't love this vibe of like, oh, they're attractive, so they don't ever have to deal with it. No, everyone deals with everything, like ghosting, breadcrumbing. So it's like having the empathy of like, oh, like they may be acting that way because they've also gone through it too, just like I have. Like that is going to be so helpful in your dating process so that you can kind of everyone can just be a little bit nicer to each other. Sorry about that tangent, but I just want to drill that down because it's really important. The third one is emotional maturity and intelligence. So, this means that they can manage their emotions, handle conflict gracefully, and approach challenges with a level head, right? They're not flying off the handle, they are cool and collected. So, this is kind of connected to empathy and compassion, in my opinion, but I think this also means that they're aware of how our emotions affect our actions and reactions. They're aware that emotions must be attended to and not dismissed, and that emotions matter, and how they act and what they say affects how other people feel. Like that is all tied up in emotional maturity and intelligence. It also means being able to tap into your own emotions and communicate what the hell is going on. How can you tell if someone is emotionally intelligent? So, empathy is a big part of it, as I said. So is self awareness and being able to regulate emotions, reading the room, right? Emotional intelligence means like reading the room, seeing what other people are going through, just like acknowledging that other people are going through stuff around you, and being able to communicate clearly and respectfully. Someone who's super aggressive when expressing emotions or boundaries or needs is probably not the most emotionally intelligent. That kind of shows a lack of ability to regulate. And look, we all get upset and angry sometimes, and sometimes like people will yell or raise their voice or like be super passionate in those emotions, and that is normal. But as someone who's really emotionally mature and intelligent, will be able to kind of not let those feelings just like drive every action they have. I think Amanda White, who came on the podcast a few months ago, said that it's like your emotions are valid, but your actions rooted in your emotions are not always valid, right? Like it's not always a valid way to act. So someone who's emotionally intelligent and mature is not going to let their emotions drive all their actions in a way that's going to like be explosive. So when you're dating, how can you tell if someone's emotionally intelligent? Well, this is where again, speaking up for yourself and advocating for your needs and your boundaries is going to let you know if they are emotionally intelligent. How do they respond to these things? Like if you set a boundary with someone and they blow up, that's a pretty clear sign they don't have the emotional maturity to be in a relationship with you. But if they respond respectfully and maybe they ask questions, maybe they want to get clarification, they're just kind of accepting this and they're respecting it, that's a huge green flag. So, this is all the more reason for you to speak up for yourself when you're dating to see how they react, because this is all information, it's all data points. And by the way, you communicating your needs and boundaries in a respectful, level headed way shows that you are emotionally intelligent and mature. So it's another way to tell if someone is on your level. All right, moving along. The fourth one on the list is growth mindset. And this one came up a lot when I polled the audience on Instagram. By the way, my Instagram is at dating.intentionally. You can connect with me there anytime. I love hearing from you. So, okay, growth mindset. This means they strive for personal development and are open to learning, adapting, and improving themselves. I mean, every person I talk to wants someone who is open to improving themselves, who works on themselves, because that's sexy. Like someone who is like striving to be better is hot. And I understand why this is on the list, because someone who has a growth mindset, it's like you can do anything together, especially when you both have a growth mindset. So this ties back to openness, but this quality means that someone actively finds ways to improve their lives, like their soft skills, their hard skills, and their relationship. Being with someone who has a growth mindset is wonderful because the world just feels so more open to different possibilities. Someone with a growth mindset usually sets off to make improvements in their lives on their own, and they don't need to be pushed or dragged to better themselves, right? You're not going to be sitting there convincing them to work on themselves. Someone with a growth mindset is going to be actively doing that on their own. So, how can you tell someone you're dating has a growth mindset? People with a growth mindset are folks who make lemonade out of lemons, right? They don't let every setback stop them from getting what they're after. They're open to challenges and willing to try new things. And they're also going to support your growth. You're not looking for a partner who tells you to change in a certain way, but they're going to support you making changes in your life by cheering you on and just kind of checking in on your journey and talking about it with you. They're not pushing you, but they're there along your side. And I love that. I mean, we all want to be in a relationship where we feel inspired, right, to get better in some way, I think. And this is a fun one to figure out on dates. I think the way to do this is to talk about your own growth journey, like your own just trajectory as a human. What have you been working on yourself? You know, that can be anything from fitness to learning skills to therapy, whatever it is. Like, how have you worked on yourself in the last few years? Don't be afraid to talk about the challenges you've overcome and get them talking about theirs too. I love this because on a date, like you can show growth mindset by how you tell your story. So, like, A good example is like, let's just say you've never been in a relationship. Someone with a growth mindset will be like, you know what? I haven't found anyone I want to be in a relationship with yet, but during the last 10 years, here are all the things I've done. Here are all the things I've worked on that have nothing to do with romance or relationships. And that shows you have a growth mindset. It's like, look at all the ways I've grown that have nothing to do with romance, like, so that's just one example of how you can figure out who has a growth mindset. If you're sitting on a date with someone who, like, you could tell they just, like, haven't had a lot of change in their lives, like, a big clue for me is anyone who has been in a job they don't like for, like, 5 years, and obviously we all need to work to live, and sometimes you just can't choose, but it's like, at 5 years, if you're kinda earlier in your career and you're just, like, you're in this job you don't like and you have no plan on the horizon to leave it and you're just like miserable, that to me doesn't show a growth mindset. That's kind of like someone who's stuck in the mud. That's you when you're listening to this. Like, I don't want you to take offense to that. Like, I'm just saying that that's a clue for me on dates of like, okay, you're in the situation you don't like and you're not doing anything to change it. So you're just going to sit here and talk about how you don't like it. And that's the end of the story. Not the most inspiring date to be on. Someone with a growth mindset will make a great partner. In my relationship, I mean, Johnny definitely has a different approach to self growth and self improvement than me. I take a very direct head on approach in therapy. I have coaches, I read books, I'm like journaling, but he has a different approach. But I know he's supportive because everything I want to do, he's like, yeah, go for it. And I love having that kind of cheerleader in my life. For me, it just like it makes a relationship amazing. All right, the fifth one is kindness and curiosity. This was the most popular one by far when I took this poll on Instagram. This was the most mentioned one of any quality on this list. A genuinely kind person treats other people with respect, generosity, compassion, even in difficult situations. There's a difference between nice and kind, and I'll get deep into that. But someone who's kind and generous is, that means being considerate and thoughtful, being respectful, and this quality can absolutely make or break a relationship. Don't date someone who isn't kind. Full stop. I mean, that's not a good setup for a relationship. Some of these other ones might not be as present, but you can't make it work with someone who isn't kind. They have to be kind, they have to be respectful. If they don't have a growth mindset, fine, I think it can work, but like you need someone who is kind. Kindness and generosity can show up in many different ways, and it really comes down to how they're treating other people and also when they're doing nice and kind things. So let's get into this because there's a difference between being nice and kind. Being nice is having a more surface level politeness. It's a bit more in the people pleasing side of things. Being nice is what you do to get by, right? And I'm not knocking niceness at all, but it's different than kindness and generosity because kindness comes from a deeper place of empathy and concern for other people, like a genuine concern. Being kind is doing the right thing even when it's uncomfortable and a little inconvenient. Someone nice is going to tell you what you want to hear to avoid conflict. Someone kind will be real with you even if it's hard. Someone nice might hold a door open for you, but someone kind will show up when it really matters and when it's more meaningful. And I'm sure you can find examples of both in someone you know. Like you can be nice and kind, but I hope this helps paint a picture of the subtle difference here because you want to be with someone who is, again, kind and generous, not just nice on the surface. Okay, the sixth one on this list is sense of humor. So, this is a very common one. People want someone to laugh with, someone with a good sense of humor sees the funny parts of life. This also ties into being a good communicator, someone who's present, someone who is smart is usually also funny. Being able to laugh with you and themselves. I mean, who doesn't want that in a relationship? No one's going to sit here and be like, I don't want someone to laugh with. No, we all want someone we can laugh with and enjoy life with. And sense of humor is so subjective. So I think in order to tell if you share a sense of humor with someone you're dating, you need to be comfortable cracking some jokes. Like show off your sense of humor. You can figure out if someone has a good sense of humor in many ways. Obviously, you can just let the jokes naturally roll. You can crack jokes and see how they react. You could also just like go to a comedy show or comedic performance of some kind and just see if you laugh at the same things. Sense of humor is interesting because it takes a little bit while to like get used to someone's sense of humor, and sometimes you can tell they have a sense of humor but it turns you off. I can think of a few times where someone's sense of humor specifically turned me off. This is probably the only thing on this list of qualities where someone could totally have it, like a great sense of humor, but it's not right for you because it just doesn't align up with your sense of humor. So I think this is very important to have in a lifelong partner with someone you want to be with for the rest of your life. Like you want to laugh together. So definitely don't be shy. show off your sense of humor. Even if jokes don't land, that's okay. I remember on my first date with Johnny, he made a joke that went completely over my head, and it was super embarrassing for me because like I actually have a pretty good sense of humor, and like I just completely missed it. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to crack some jokes. Show off your sense of humor. Maybe some of your jokes won't land. Maybe you might have some awkward moments, but you know what? That's just dating sometimes. It's worth it. It's worth giving it a shot. The seventh one on this list is honesty, right? Can you trust them? Are they an honest person? And this is another baseline one like kindness. Like, don't date someone who isn't honest. Honest with you, honest with themselves. I mean, this is the foundation of trust, and you can't have a relationship if you don't have trust. So, how can you tell if your date is honest? And this is tricky too, but in a different way than sense of humor because it really does take time to figure out if someone is honest. Like, you need to give people the benefit of the doubt and take the things they say at face value when you first get to know them. Because when you're first getting to know someone, you don't have a real reason to think they're dishonest with you, right? My advice here is to take people at their word until you have a legit reason not to. And your fear of being lied to isn't always the most credible source, right? I get being wary, but there's a point where too much wariness stops us from connecting and building trust. So, what are some signs that someone is honest? One, their actions and words line up. That's a big one. If they admit mistakes, if they're transparent, right? If they tell the truth even when it's not something that you want to hear, right? And if they don't exaggerate or bend the truth. Like if you feel like they're exaggerating, that could be a clear sign that they're not being honest. If they're giving you indirect answers, blaming other people, getting super defensive, or maybe showing signs that they're hiding something, or if their story changes, those are some signs that you might be dealing with someone who's not honest. So until you have to kind of see how someone behaves consistently to tell if they're being honest or not. So that's why you need to give this one a little more time, but it is definitely something to keep in mind as you get to know someone. Do their actions align with their words, right? Are they telling you the truth? You know? And I know like there are little white lies that happen in dating. Like I think there are lies of omission that happen in early dating that are okay. But for the most part, once you get to know someone down the line, you are aiming for honesty, openness, transparency. Okay, we've got a few more. The eighth one is the ability to apologize and take accountability. So, someone who is accountable and has the ability to apologize is going to be an amazing partner because they can see how they've made mistakes, they can take accountability for them, and then they can make change, right? Saying sorry isn't enough. It's really about the accountability piece here. So, how can you tell if they're accountable? Sometimes this can come later too, like honesty, but someone even just being able to apologize is so hot. Like, there's nothing more attractive than someone who knows how to properly say sorry and take accountability for their mistakes. Not a sorry you feel that way, or like an insincere sorry or a defensive comment that flips the blame onto you, but a proper, like, hey, I hear you. I understand your feelings and how my actions hurt you. Here are the steps I can take in the future. That is a good apology. Someone who knows how to take accountability will make an amazing partner because it shows that they have awareness of how they contribute to your shared dynamic. It shows that they can accept responsibility for their actions and how their actions might affect you. And they can't control your reactions, but they can be aware and take accountability of their own. One easy way to tell if someone is accountable is how they talk about their life. Like, if everything negative or bad that ever happens is someone else's fault, they probably lack accountability. And look, I know sometimes we're just dealt a bad hand of cards in life, but at some point we have to own how we affect our life's circumstances as well. So, this could look like if they blame their last breakup on their crazy ex, or if they're constantly talking about their toxic boss that screwed them over, or maybe referencing other ways people have done them wrong, basically not acknowledging their own role in their life. And we're talking about what happens most of the time. Like, obviously, sometimes shit happens, but like, we really, again, have to be able to take accountability. Someone who takes accountability just recognizes that they have a role in their life. It's like an active, like, their choices affect how their life is going to go. So, someone who takes accountability can reflect on past experiences. It's about how they talk about their past relationships, if applicable. Like, if they're talking about their past relationship and why it ended, and they're talking about their part in that, that means that they are probably a more accountable person, right? They're like taking responsibility for their part in that breakup, and that's a green flag. You know, it'll show up also how they talk about their struggles in life. Like, if they struggle with something in the past, what was their role in that? What did they do to change that, you know? Also, generally, if they focus more on solutions than complaints, they're probably an accountable person. This is also just really important because how you repair is way more important than what you fight about. And someone who is able to apologize and take accountability is going to repair with you a lot better. And your relationship will be stronger after conflict versus someone who's not able to really apologize or take accountability. The relationship just gets weaker and weaker with every fight. All right, the ninth one is self awareness. Self awareness is a big one. It's kind of woven throughout this entire list. Like, you can't be empathetic, emotionally intelligent, have a growth mindset, and be accountable without being somewhat self aware. This quality in a partner is just really connected to the other qualities. So, if you're going down this list and you're like, yep, I have all these things, or my partner has all these things, they're probably self aware too. And that's fantastic. Someone who's self aware understands their strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and behaviors, and they can take responsibility for their actions. They probably have a strong relationship with themselves, which I just did a whole episode about. You can go back and listen to that. And it's just going to be someone who is aware of their tendencies. Again, like I said, self awareness is related to a lot of the things we already talked about, but someone who you can probably tell how self aware someone is based on just like how they talk about themselves. Again, how they talk about their story, their past, how they show up in relationships. Like, these are topics you definitely want to get into on the third, fourth date. Like, how have they showed up in their past relationships? How do they show up in their family and their friendships? Listen closely to the way they talk about how they show up in these relationships and what their role is. That is definitely going to be a clue of whether or not they're self aware. All right, the last one on this list. You might be like, wow, where is this one? Like, you may be thinking, like, how have we gotten to nine things and she hasn't said this yet? Well, maybe this is the one. It is reliability and consistency. So be someone who is reliable and consistent. We want this quality in a partner. This is a very important thing to look for in a partner when you're dating. And this is another one of the top ones that got mentioned when I did my poll on Instagram. This ties in with honesty and trustworthiness and basically means this is going to be someone you can rely on because they're consistent. Their actions are somewhat predictable. You know when you're going to hear from them. They're responsible. You can trust them, right? That is what we want in a partner. We want someone who we know we can rely on and we know it's going to show up for us. Like, someone who is breadcrumbing you or ghosting you, or they text you a lot one week and then they fall off the grid the next week, they're not reliable. They're not consistent. We don't want a partner like that. They're out. Someone who constantly flakes out on plans with you, not reliable or consistent. We don't want that. They're out. And I think the way you can tell if your date is going to be reliable or consistent is that you need to give them space to show up. Like, if you're constantly making all the plans, you're texting, you're doing everything, you're not giving them any room to show you how they're going to show up. So take a step back, give them the space to plan a date, to follow through, to text you, to call you. Also, look at how their actions line up with their words. Like, most basic one is if they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll be in touch with you on after I get back from my trip." And if they do that, great. They are reliable and consistent. If they don't do that, they're showing you they are not partner material. Also, pay attention to their behavior when you reach out, when you make plans. Are they responding? Are they receptive to you making plans with them? Those are other signs that someone is reliable and consistent. When I started dating Johnny, he was insanely consistent and it made him stand out against everyone else I was seeing and everyone else I had seen before him. Like, sometimes I think consistency can come off as boring or even sometimes as too much because we're so used to flakiness. Like, think about all the people you've dated and how many times things have just fizzled out or you're just like not sure what's going on. The person who like texts you maybe every day and like is making plans with you once a week might come off like they're coming off too strong, but they're actually not. It's just that we're used to flakiness and crappy behavior. So be on the lookout for someone who consistently makes plans with you, even if they're not necessarily texting you every day. Like, if they're consistently making plans with you and spending time with you, then that is a huge green flag. That's the biggest green flag of all. So, this is a great list. I mean, we had so many wonderful qualities on this list, and I'm really curious to hear from you if you think you embody these qualities. If are you showing up as consistent? Are you being honest and transparent? Are you accountable and all these things? So, this is just stuff to keep in mind. Again, so many people listed these things in what they want in a partner. And I love how at the end of the day, we all have like these things in common. Like, these are the things that will make a relationship thrive. And that's something that relates to everyone. I would be really surprised if you listened to this full list and thought of one thing that you didn't want. If you did, please tell me. I would love to know. So, when it comes to choosing a partner, you might not get someone with 100% of all 10 of these qualities. Like, no one is perfect. People slip up. And that's where your empathy and compassion comes in. Everyone has areas for growth. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, these qualities in a person will increase your chances of it actually working out long term versus just looking for someone with a stable job. Like jobs change, looks change, bodies change, the way someone dresses can change. Character and who someone is at their core is different. Like you can't teach someone generosity. You can't teach someone consistency. So that's why these things are at the core just so important. And again, don't look for perfection, just look for clues that they have most of these qualities. All right, so here are some of the other qualities that listeners of the pod shared with me that did not make the cut but are still important. They are confidence. So I think this is something that people find really attractive. I don't know if confidence is like necessary for a really healthy long term relationship in terms of like relational skills, but it's great to have. I mean, sure. Good listener, which I think falls under the empathy umbrella. Protective came up a bunch, which I found interesting because although I can understand, I can't relate, but it did come up a bunch. Accepting came up a bunch, good communicator, independent, ambitious, and being a planner. We love planners. People make plans, we see you, and you're hot. So that is all I have for you today in terms of this list. I do want to get into some personal updates. So if you do not care about hearing about my life, you can enjoy the next episode. But I haven't shared a personal update in a while. I just wanted to check in, just say, hey, it's been a while. Johnny and I have been married for 3 to 4 months, and it's honestly like it's been pure bliss. And I love being married to him. And it was pretty blissful before, but I will say now that wedding planning and like engagement stress is behind us, it is just so nice. So I'm recording this in early January, and we had some really great check ins in December. We did an annual review and then a financial review where we talked about our goals. And if you're in a relationship, I highly recommend doing some kind of review, maybe your anniversary or at the end of the year or whenever. It doesn't have to be a specific moment, but it's so nice to sit down and talk about what went right in the last 6 months or 12 months or whatever, what you want more of, what you want less of, your goals, and what you're going to do moving forward together. For the financial review, we looked at our spending for the last 12 months together and got a good sense of what we spent on, how much we spent on stuff, and the changes we want to make, plus our financial goals. Even though we've been together for a few years, we never had financial goals together because it just didn't make sense to us before marriage. I mean, I think you can have financial goals with someone if even if you're not married, but for us it just didn't make sense. Now our finances are like a little bit more tied together. Also our lives are tied together. So it was really nice to sit down and be like, okay, what are we doing with our lives basically, and like, how we manage our money supports that, and like what trips do we want to take, what do we want to save up for, are we going to buy a house. One of the big reasons we're talking about our finances now is that we are trying to get closer to the decision of whether or not to have kids. And obviously it's like, okay, if you're listening to this, you might be like, hey, Talia, you just got married. Do you need to do this now? And for me, I'm turning 33 in a few months, and we definitely aren't going to start this year at all. But like having a timeline helps, especially as a business owner. My biggest barrier to kids has always been the finances of it all. So having this financial check-in this year like really helped put me at ease. And Johnny was so great. He made all these financial models for us to look at like what our lives would look like if we do or don't have kids and when. And I guess I'm just sharing this to kind of show you guys that you can have a lot of conversations about it. You don't need to know for sure before you get married, and you can make this decision together. I've also been doing a lot of planning for my business, and I'm just really excited for this year. I have an idea for a membership I might want to create. I'm also looking at producing my own question card deck. Writing a book proposal is also something I'm considering tackling this year, but I'm on the fence. Basically, if I would start writing a book now, it would be out in like 2027 or even later, depending on how long it takes to get it sold to a publisher. That's a long time from now. I don't know, let me know what you think. Like, could I self publish? Yes, but I'm honestly not interested in that route because both are a lot of work in different ways. Obviously, this year I plan on continuing to grow the show and talk more about early or new relationship stuff too. And I'm just excited. Like, I love this business. I am so grateful that I get to do this as my job, full time. And all I want to do is make dating easier for you. I can't promise you a partner, but I can promise that you're going to enjoy the process more and kind of, again, like with this episode, recalibrate what you're looking for so that you can find it faster and just get into that relationship the second you find someone you want to be in a relationship with. And I'm just doing everything I can in my power to help you do that. So thank you for being here. All right, that's my update. And that's the show. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little help trying to figure out who to choose and why to choose them. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help other daters find the show by leaving a stunning review on Apple or giving Dating Intentionally 5 stars on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll see you next time.